start a minute. No big deal.
Okay. Well.
Welcome. That means you will get our undivided attention.
Oh.
No pressure.
Okay, so for the camera and the audience, we are Lost Tribes Gaming. We're part of a local-ish role-playing group. We play RPGs, tabletop games, and we're on Twitch and YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. We play a good variety of games. We played D&D. We've played Mass Effect, which was based on a D&D 5th edition, a bunch of World of Darkness stuff, Cyberpunk, Firefly, Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes. Got a lot of different stuff that we've played. Star Wars. So currently we're playing Star Wars every other Wednesday, so tune in next week.
Tune in this week.
Oh yeah, it's Sunday.
Yep.
This week.
This week is Star Wars on
Wednesday. We've got a World of Darkness mix game on Friday, and then Marvel Superheroes on Saturday. And then we're about to start a new game that's kind of a
new game.
But it's like a homebrew, right?
Kind of, sort of.
It's kind of a apocalyptic. I don't know much about it. It's a lot under wraps.
Yes,
but we're starting that next week, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this panel is on building characters, and so I'd like to start off with. So this is meant to be kind of interactive. We can talk at you, or we can help you with something that you're working on.
Yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know.
So if there's anything specific that you came to try and get out of coming to this panel, please let us know, so we can kind of
Yep. That's what it's here for.
Yeah, we want to be helpful to you. So I guess we'll just start in, and then just raise your hand if you.
Take us away, moderator.
Okay. So the first.
Moderator Bast.
Yeah. I'm incognito today.
Yes.
As a Jedi master. So first thing the first key point that we want to talk about is that to make your character more meaningful, you have to go beyond just the numbers. So Jerome, how can you build character with depth?
Well, for me, I don't really play much anymore, but it's still applicable because I'm building NPCs. But sometimes it's for me, I don't worry so much about the stats. I worry about the personality. What am I aiming to bring out in that character to make it stand out to the players to want to interact with it, right? You don't want to make them too offensive or too laughable, because then they can be a distraction. But you don't want them to have too much information, because then they might lean on it as a crutch. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll take, like I actually just watched this with, it was an interview on Club Shay Shay with, for those of you who don't know, Shannon Sharp.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, Shannon Sharp, a former professional football player, tight end, now internet personality, Club Shay Shay. He was interviewing Damon Wayans, and he was trying to find out like how he comes up with some of these characters, because Damon Wayans has been involved in Hollywood now for like 40 years, and he happened to touch on Major Payne. And I love Major Payne, one of my favorite movies. And he actually had no idea what he was going to do with that character, but then he, like personality-wise, but then he ended up meeting this drill instructor who was all intense, all like just like all at once. And so he took a little bit from that guy, and then there was somebody else, I can't remember who it was, And then he kind of went, and they had this way of speaking as well as dealing with people, and that's kind of how he meshed those two, and then came up with Major Payne. The mannerisms, the look, you know.
So based on an actual person?
Yeah. And sometimes I'll do that too. Like I'll look at like a specific person, and maybe I'll try and mimic that voice or something, and then I'll try and see, well, how can I bring it into this world? Like if it's a fantasy world, if it's whatever, you know. And then practice. And with me, if I'm trying to do a voice, I'll practice. You know, I'll have conversations with myself and talk about things that might be appropriate to that world. So I know like ahead of time what I'm saying, what that might sound like, so on and so forth. But usually it's mannerisms and characteristics from people or other characters that I might identify with that I might want to draw out and expand on.
Okay.
How do you incorporate your like backstories for a character into like your mannerisms for your characters?
Actually, that's a great question. How do you incorporate? Because we'll be touching on backstories here in a second. But one of the things I'll do, because it's a great question, how they act may actually be directly reflected in the background. So sometimes, we talked about this at the last panel, I came up with Shannon, who talks like this, and she's a bit of a flirt. So the first thing I thought of when I was making up that voice, she has smoker's throat. So she smoked way too much, and so that's obviously going to be something that went into her mannerism. So she's probably got, she probably has or had some sort of stressful job that required her to smoke a lot to stay calm, to calm her nerves. What type of job would that be?
We never asked her about that.
I know.
It was probably working with the Giovanni.
Yes.
Super stressful.
Precisely. But basically, she was involved, that particular character had been involved in organized crime. And watch any gangster flick.
And now
They
she runs a pawn shop.
smoke like chimneys. And now and pawn shops, sometimes they can be targets of organized crime. So yeah, I mean, that all kind of started feeling like that all started coming out when I came out with that idea and persona. It's like, okay, well, why would you do that? Okay, well then, okay, that makes sense. I'll draw that in. And what would I do to expand on it? Oh, well, that's easy enough. And I pull this over, and now she's running a pawn shop because that's all kind of familiar. You have to offload things in a hurry, off the back of the truck sort of thing, So sometimes it'll come up like that. Yeah, great question.
Let's backtrack a second before we go back into backstory a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that was just kind of the lead-in.
Yeah. Rachel, do you want to talk about how you approach developing a character?
Yeah, because you came up with a completely different character concept for this World of Darkness,
Yeah.
which is very different from one.
It's been fun to interact with.
Yeah.
I can't actually. Angela helped me with that character. It stemmed from one of her
Yeah, I
characters from back
recognize
in
the
the day.
name. I recognize the name.
Yeah. So basically, the character that I made, she's a Dampier. She's basically very, very thin blood vampire, to the point where she's practically human. But that's considered a bad thing in this world. And her backstory was very violent, very I don't know how to describe, but just abusive and just a very unwanted individual. And she basically went through a full complete identity change. And what I had to do with that is, that character her personality initially is scared. She's in hiding essentially. But what I present to the people on the outside is this Eastern sort of very mechanically tomboyish type of person. I talk like this all the time, and I try to get into that mindset. So I find if I was getting into that accent, that whole New York, which is not me at all, to basically cover up all of these scars that she's had. And I really wanted, normally I don't go dark with characters at all, and when I was presented with this, I was like, this is a very 180 from what I'm normally accustomed to. So I did some research on the mental issues that she has now, or that I feel would present itself. I did a lot of I watched a lot of films, just more of accents about how to present that New York Bronx attitude into the character. So a lot of that was just research and watching stuff, pulling ideas and things and inspiration from other personalities, TV characters. So, yeah.
And when I start a new character, I always try and do something a little bit different, and inevitably they all kind of end up pulling from me, but I they start out different. So I like to try and stretch myself. So I'll think like what kind of character have I not played yet, or have I not tried yet?
Come on in.
And so I'll start there and kind of figure out like how that type of a character might fit into this
We
world.
saved you both a seat.
And then I'll do some research to try and figure out like, what kind of role they would have in that setting. And then, depending on the setting, if it's like more realistic or more fantasy or whatever, I'll try and kind of figure out what their life would be like, and then living in that world, what their history might have been. So for our World of Darkness mix game, I actually play.
Yeah, cool.
I actually play an immortal, like Highlander.
That's the only one.
But where I started with her was I knew this is like a supplement that we pulled her from, and I love Highlander, and so I was like, I want to try that, and it started out with like the restriction on playing it. Jerome said she can only be X number of years old, because beyond that, like, she's too overpowered. And so I was like, okay, well, what was happening in the world at that time? And I think it was 250.
Mm-hmm.
She'd only be 250. So I was like, okay, well, what year does that place us at? And it ended up being like French Revolution is about the time is like I decided, and that's a thing that I know a lot about anyway, because I have studied a lot of European history from there. But so I wrote her so that she was an adult in the French Revolution, and if you know anything about Highlander, they just live a normal life until they die the first time, and then from that that's how old they stay. They come back from that death, and then they're now part of this lore. And so I figured out that she was basically a refugee, that her family had been killed in the revolution, and that she was able to escape. And then in Highlander lore, they have holy ground, and so holy ground is mostly associated with churches, and so and France is very Catholic. So I was like, okay, well, she could, and as a woman especially, like, that's kind of where I was going, was I had to think about like what would be different about a woman in this situation in these eras of history, and how would that have affected her background. And so this character actually spent a lot of time in convents, because they're safe from other immortals, and because that was one of the only places that a woman alone could be safe, or could spend time. So anyway, so she ended up being a very religious character, and that kind of, Rachel, close your ears for a second.
I already told you some of my stuff.
So that kind of led really naturally into the World of Darkness, where my character ended up, staying close to the Catholic Church, there is an antagonistic organization in the world of darkness that's basically vampire hunters through the church. And my character was recently brought in as a member of this vampire hunting society. And so that puts us very much at odds with other characters in the game, and it's very interesting to watch it play out. So anyway, so long story short, it's all kind of a tangled web. When I build a character, or when anyone builds a character, like you end up, you know, by trying to figure out the realities that your character would be dealing with, ends up making a lot of details that you can work with later to make your role play in your game a lot more, you know, interesting, and potentially set up
To watch my
complications.
background.
Well, there's more to it. You're okay.
I'm super
There's more to it.
thin-blooded. I'm as close to human as you're probably going to get in this group.
Oh, and because you two entered just a little bit later, this is open forum, so if you guys have any questions at any point in time, just raise your hand. It's intended to be very interactive.
And like we mentioned earlier that you missed, if there's any like particular things that you'd like to get out of this discussion, please.
Right, yeah.
Please
Like
raise your
if
hand.
you have characters or something that you want to, because it also works as a workshop. We try to help people with their own characters, or and sometimes it involves characters of players in their own groups or whatnot. And it's meant to be a place where you can throw those comments out and obviously not have to worry about some of those folks if you don't want to spill the beans. You know, that sort of thing. It's meant to be as helpful as possible in the workshop.
So coming full circle, let's talk about backstory.
You touched on that backstory.
Yeah, we did, and I kind of info dumped just now. How do you weave in your backstory in a game in a more organic way? And I would posit that it's really helpful if you have if your character has behaviors or opinions,
Affectations.
that that come out in the gameplay. So I had a character in our vampire game who stop laughing. I had a character who had a flaw that she had a phobia of homeless people. And you'd think that's just, you know, a throwaway thing, but it ended up coming into play quite a bit, and it made things very interesting.
We had another character, George's character,
Yep.
come in, and he was a homeless vampire.
Game one, we had a new
vampire
player.
came in, and she's like, oh god.
She could not be in the same room with him.
So immediately opening game, she's on.
So we had to clean him up and give him a suit from some other body.
Yeah.
And you know, that makes things really interesting. But like,
Made it funny.
if you can develop a why, and this is another recommendation that I have, is like if somebody in your party starts or like behaves in a certain way and it seems odd to you, try and ask them about it. Ask them about it, and then
Most of the time, that's why they're playing that affectation
exactly.
or something. Is like,
they
you
want,
notice it. Talk to me
They
about
want
it.
it to come out.
Yeah.
But you know, you have to figure. I mean, like if you're, you know, in the middle of a fight, maybe you don't have time to like sit down and ask them questions like, "Why did you behave that way?" But they're doing it for a reason, probably.
Character
and-
with a phobia of snakes too.
Yeah, and like
That
so.
was fun.
Oh yeah, that was
That
hilarious.
was great.
And that was hilarious every single
I
time.
never imagined it would ever play out that way. That was great. But basically,
and we knew that. We knew
it's
that
the
character
Indiana
for
Jones trope,
years
right?
before.
You know, it's
before ever.
you know, he had a bad. If you ever watched part 3, you realize, okay, this is why he has a phobia of snakes. He ended up landing in a snake pit. You know, when he was trying to get away, and it stayed with him the whole time. Well, this particular character, when he made his character, he just put down a phobia of snakes because he figured it would never come up. Okay, well.
Because you get extra points if you put a flaw in. So
In that particular
you
game
can spend them
system,
somewhere else.
And so,
Who wouldn't want to do that?
Many games later, one of the vampires had an affectation for snakes. He's what's called a Setite, so a follower of Set, snakes, big snake god. And at one point, he decided to spy on some others that were coming down a tunnel. It was a tunnel that had been half built with the expressed intention to be like an expressway, like to clog, but it never got finished. But some other vampires were using it to sneak in and out of the city without being seen by the local authorities. And so he decided to shapeshift down into the form of a snake, because a snake in a tunnel, that makes sense, right? I mean, it's whatever. Someone's going to think twice about that, and these vampires didn't either. So when they saw the snake, they're like, oh, well, and they kick it. Well, he has effectively superhuman strength when he kicked it. It's a vampire, right? They kicked this thing, Place kicked it like an NFL kicker. Now, many games later, he had no idea this was ever going to come up, but it did. And it had like the game previous. So now at this point, he's waiting here, and out from the darkness comes this airborne snake, just flying right at him. And he freaks, he panic frenzies, and the only thing we hear from him is, "They fly now!" And wow, and he runs. And we lost like 10 minutes just laughing.
This player was our heavy hitter.
Yes.
So we were fully expecting this to turn into a big fight, and there goes our heavy hitter.
Yes.
We're like, oh crap.
Yep. And to top that off, he had superhuman speed.
Oh, yep.
So he's running basically like Lestat, just like flying. Well, by the time he realizes when he stops, he's halfway across the city. And so he's like, oh man, and he's got to run all the way back. Try to find stuff like that. Again,
And then we had to send him into therapy to get over it.
Yeah.
Like the Indiana Jones thing. It's like you never know when it's going to pop up, but sometimes when it does, it's inappropriate, but it's funny, and it's great character building. It's great fun for the players because you get to enjoy it. I guess backstory without necessarily info dump. One of the things I was going to add, make it open ended. Don't write a complete story start to finish. Like you've conquered this and you rescued the princess, and now you've got your back pocket full of mushrooms that will allow you to one-up power-ups and your fireballs, whatever. And now you're a level 1 character. Leave it open. Leave yourself some room to expand as your story is exploring at the table with everybody else. And when it comes to nervous tics, don't be ashamed or offended if people don't pick up on it right away. Some people may just accept it, like you chew a toothpick because you chew a toothpick, right? Maybe you just like the flavor.
That's something that often comes down to the skill of the players.
Yeah.
And the skill at picking up on those cues, but their skill at also portraying those cues. So. Well,
and some people might look at that like I was mentioning and just accept it that that's what you do, and it's not really. They don't understand that maybe there was something else behind it. Just pick and choose your battle. It doesn't even have to be a battle. It's probably a bad analogy to say, but just pick and choose your moments when you want to bring that up to the forefront. Like maybe there's a time when you guys are in the trenches or something, and something's about to happen, and now you don't have your toothpick, and now you're like, oh crap. And then now somebody can ask, okay, what's the deal? Why are you tripping because you don't have your stupid toothpick? Now you can finally lay it out. Just wait for some organic moments to finally go out.
I would agree with all of that. I personally like taking phobias or flaws with my characters because of the fact that it makes it more interesting to play, to be honest. And as I've gone on through the years, I like stepping a little bit outside of the box on some of those because, you always have characters that will maybe fiddle with, a little fidget spinner, or they, have OCD or something like that. But I like making characters that have more mental affectations. Like I had a character that has a phobia of being trapped underwater. My current character, has a fear of being buried alive, because in her backstory, she was. she was buried alive, left for dead, and she had to crawl her way out. So anytime,
She was a shovelhead.
Yep.
quite literally, yeah. But
And for those of you who
not-
don't understand, there's a faction of vampires in that particular game that are very brutal, gang-like, almost cultish,
They do
and
mass
when they're doing mass embraces, when they're trying to beef up their numbers to take on a big target, they'll do something like that, like just
survival. of the
Only it wasn't the
fittest.
Savat, it was her own family that did it.
Oh,
Oh.
sucky.
well,
Huh.
it just sucks to be you.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so, now
That's
I am constantly
rough, buddy.
thinking about that in character now, because she's always looking behind her shoulder, like, are they after me? Now they are, again. So now she's scared all over again, but too afraid to tell other people how scared she really is. If it's kind of a, catch-22 there. So, yeah, it's made it a lot more interesting to
we
play
have no
this.
idea that we think you're just a vampire.
I know.
We have no idea that you have all of
But,
these problems.
One more thing I wanted to touch on with backstory too, because you mentioned, don't be afraid to try to step a little bit outside the box. You don't have to go like way out of your comfort zone. But what I found when I've been developing characters for backstories, I'll pick a city or maybe an era or something, and I'll start researching a little bit. And it's a fun way to learn something interesting that you may, inadvertently stumble on. Like when I was coming up with this game that they're talking about, the World of Darkness game, I was like, I want to pick a different area, and it just happenstance that I saw this picture of Savannah, Georgia, and it's very classic. Like many people take pictures of it, and it's from the garden, the Midnight Garden of Good and Evil, or I think it's the name of the title, something like that. But the picture is of one of the parks, and it's beautiful, like weeping willow kind of coming around, and they've got a nice lit up. And there was something about the picture that drew me in. I loved it. I was like, I want to explore that city. Maybe that'll work. Come to find out, it's one of the most haunted cities in the entire United States. And I went, perfect. I need to learn more, So, and it suited me as far as the setting. As soon as I explored that, I was like, this is great. I want to dive more in and sink my teeth in here. So, don't be afraid to do little things like that to add to your character, because not only does it add to your own knowledge base, because we should always be trying to just keep learning. Don't turn that off. But at the same time, it's going to give you a basis to step back from your character and perspective. Because if you have if you understand, maybe you don't know what they're going to look like in the future, but if you understand what they're looking or thinking and they're acting like right now, you're going to be able to pivot. It's an improv tool. You'll be able to pivot a lot, where other people kind of throw something at you like, oh, okay, no, I think I would probably think like this because this is where I grew up, or whatever have you. And when you have that understanding, your character now becomes more organic, way more lifelike, and it gives you more to work with, especially when you're dealing with other people.
We have any questions about backstory?
I had a question
Go
about
ahead.
you were talking about like age and stats. How do you deal? How do you know like what age someone should be for like a particular level? Like if you're if like your DM says you're create a character at level 3, how do you know how old?
Oh, okay, that's a great question. Since most of that is, I'm going to throw this out there. You're all probably playing D&D.
Which it's okay. There's nothing wrong with
No.
playing D&D.
And
It's where a
that's-
lot of people
I-
start.
I'm
That's
an
where I
old
started.
school gamer. I started off first ed, so like way back. So everybody pretty much tends to start off at D. It's the most popular, and so everybody thinks level stats, kind of that point. Okay, so if you're doing something like that, most of your characters, because it's not an open-based game, it's more linear. Most of your characters starting level 1 you're probably going to be somewhere in the realm of like, I wouldn't advise going up below adult level just for depending on play style, but probably somewhere right around 18. You've just become an adult. You're just getting off the farm or getting out of the castle or whatever your initial story base is at. That's probably where you're at level 1. Level 3, maybe 2021, somewhere. You've got a little bit of experience, but not a whole lot. You've seen some things. You stepped outside. You stepped outside maybe the kingdom once or twice. You kind of know what the lands out there are like. Games we're talking about are a little bit more open-ended for story purposes, so you have a little bit more freedom to do it. You can still play with that as far as D&D is concerned. They don't really do this much anymore in the 5th edition, but 2nd edition started introducing, and you may actually see these in like Bookman's, because they're pretty popular, the Ultimate Fighter's Guide, Ultimate Druid's Guide. They're these nice little brown compilation packs. I'd advise you to pick them up. They're dirt cheap. Obviously, the mechanics aren't going to work for 5th ed, but they have fantastic ideas in them. And if you have a character, like say for example, you started late in life, maybe maybe you were the 0 level peasant for a long time because there was no need to be anything else, right? Maybe you're now 30 and you've realized, oh crap, the kingdom has collapsed. The sheriff is gone here in town. Somebody's got to step up.
Yeah, I've got to pick up a sword now at 30 years old. Never had to do it before in my life.
And now that becomes an extra facet of your story. So you're running into all these beginning level people looking at you going like, what do we do? Dude, I don't know. I'm new to this. What do you mean you're new to this? You're like 30 something. I can tell you everything there is to know about, potatoes and farming, and I can milk a cow like nobody's business, right? But when it comes to like orcs and goblins, forget about it. I'm as new to this as you are. And so basically you've got like Nathan Fillion and the rookie, who's decided late in life he was going to be a cop. Very similar. You can do something like that. Other games, it's a little bit more, open-ended, but if you're new to games, and you're new to gaming, probably advisable to mirror yourself. Don't try to put yourself in shoes you can't really fill. I think, at least in my opinion, because then in and out of character, people would start looking at your character going like, well, you should know these things. And that can work to an extent, but it becomes awkward when you keep having to look at your dungeon master or your game master. Would I know that? So that goes back to the organicness of the background. Like if you already have a strong understanding of your character and you put yourself in that position, you're just, even if the dice aren't really your friend, you're still going to be succeeding. You're going to be growing as your character grows. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it can be really fun to do those like non-traditional characters, especially because that gives you extra things to work with in your role play. Like say you're 30-year-old farmer turned fighter, doesn't know a whole lot about adventuring, but they know a whole lot about where to find food and like survival and like all of these other skills that can prove to be really important to your party's survival in other ways. So, or just good role play flavor. So I think those can be a lot of fun.
How do you mirror that to like other races? Like if you're not playing a human, like that can help for.
At that point, another great question. Yeah, that you're going to need to look at the background for that particular. Because not all fantasy games play them exactly the same way, but they're pretty close, and just mirror them to that appropriate age.
Okay.
It does become a little bit of a semantic detail because you think about it. You're like, okay, well, my elf. They're not even adult until they're almost like 50. Why wouldn't they have more experience in that? Well, you kind of have to hand wave that.
Yeah, or maybe they're just like sheltered. Or
I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's lame, but I mean, at some point you kind of have to go like, okay, well, we're not really going to explore that. It's just,
Is there a creative way to?
I mean, there is, but it's going to require you to look at what that setting is, what game setting you're playing in first. And then look at the race and their age, and then
their area. Like
focus. And then focus on like what did that look like. Most of the 5e books are pretty good, at least now. Not when I was coming up, but they are now. They'll give you enough meat on the bone to kind of answer that question. But again, also look at the area that they're from, because like for example, your standard elf in Pathfinder is not going to be your standard elf in D&D. You know, and your standard elf in D&D may not even match the standard elf in D&D, depending on where it came from. Is it a Ravenloft elf? Is it a Dark Sun elf? Is it a, you know, did they come from Strixhaven? Did they come from, you know, Dragonlance, for example? I mean, they're all going to be, you know, different in their own way. So that might be, you know, another way to look at it, is look at the setting and then mirror some of those elements together to more properly match what you think your character should probably be at that age. With obviously some guidance from your dungeon master too.
And I think it can be really helpful, especially like when you're building a character, to say, you know, you only have X number of points to work with.
Yeah.
When you're building a new character. And I ran into this when with my Immortal too. So she's been around for 250 years, but why aren't her stats higher?
Yeah.
Well, mechanically, these are all the points that I have to work with. But asking myself, why doesn't she have this kind of experience that you would expect from somebody of those age? It can really kind of get your wheels spinning to figure out, okay, well, what was holding my character back from learning XYZ skill that I would expect them to have at this stage in their life, and that can just give you extra layers of you know, explanation in your backstory.
Shelter, amnesia.
Yep.
Went on a walkabout.
And then I mean, like for our World of Darkness game, there are some where like so my character being very religious, there was a point where you know, it came up that, oh, she should probably know Latin, but I didn't spend points on that at the beginning. I, you know, spent them elsewhere, and so I was like, well, that's just something that I'm maybe gonna buy, and then we'll just pretend that I knew that all along.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, you can. That's a good point. You might be able to wing it a little bit until you get the points.
Yeah.
If it doesn't really come up.
Yeah.
You know, if you're
So,
out
like,
there going like, oh well, I know everything there is. Well, they're going to turn to you and say, well, what do you know about this clan of orcs? And then you have nothing to roll for it. You know,
So then you just kind of like keep a shopping list of skills that you'd like to buy when you have the points for them, and then, you know, just hope that you don't have to run into that until you actually have that skill.
right.
So then fake it till you make it.
Yep. So.
At that point, I would say if you're brave enough, hone your improv skills and act your butt off.
Hope your DM doesn't ask you to roll for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about.
Wait, a question.
Oh, question. Yes.
How would you navigate building a backstory if your game master doesn't give you rich world lore?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I don't want to throw your dungeon master under the bus, but that's partly their fault. But to give them grace, they may be sort of new at it as well. So that may be a conversation you want to have with them to say, look, I'm wanting to deep dive, and obviously this is your world. Is there something I'm missing? Like, is there something else over here, or and this may be something, you know, an impetus upon you. Hey, this is kind of what I'm looking at here for my character. Do you mind if I flesh this out and then present this to you and see if it's cool? A lot of times, especially with newer game masters and dungeon masters, they haven't thought of everything. And you pulling out something out of the ether way out of here at left field is just going to spark their creativity, because you did something that they didn't expect, and they end up thinking, oh, that's cool. How can I build that into my world? And then that gets their own mind turning. So have a conversation.
Very much
with
a
your dungeon
collaborative
master.
effort on something like that.
Yeah, do something with your own, you know, obviously don't make it like world breaking, or, you know, that's going to hijack the story, but, you know, obviously keep things open-ended. But, you know, come up with something and then throw it at them and see what they say. Don't be surprised if they say no, but I found, like in my experience, I mean, I've got a lot of experience, but I found in my experience that a lot of times when the player has gone to that length to come up with something, it usually, like I said, it usually sparks something in me that makes me want to wrap that into something that's going to fit You know, or another way to look at it, this is me and my GM hat on. You know, okay, well, that's their understanding of their own backstory. What is really out here? And you can ask these two. There's been plenty of times I've thrown a sibling that they didn't know about, or some friend that they ran into at some point in time, a friend of a friend sort of thing, and they're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And it was like, well, yeah, I'm this cousin Vinny, or I'm this whatever, you know. And then now you've got, again, it's all organic again, and now it's spinning in a new direction that you're excited to anticipate, because your idea is being used, but your idea is also fresh. You don't know everything about it. So if you have that conversation, it could work out that way. So I strongly suggest it.
And also, you know, if you're that invested in your character, then the DM knows that you're locked in and they can work with you, and you'll probably be, you know, maybe you'll get a little more screen time because you are that engaged in the game.
I will say, as a game master, that is very true. I've got players, and I was actually just thinking about this at the beginning of the convention, and it's not a knock against some of the players. Some people, they can't do it. They would rather be the fly on the wall that can step off every so often and interact, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You're with your friends, you've got your piece of the story, and you're good. The problem comes up is when you've got that wallflower that keeps saying, well, what about me, what about me? At that point, you need to give your DM a break and probably provide them with something. You know, take the onus upon yourself. Stop making it all about them, because like in your case, you got one or two players out here that are just, they have got all kinds of ideas, or they've got things that they want to do. They want to do other things with other players. If you want to be just along for the ride, great, let's do that. There's a place for everybody at the table. But if you want to take that step forward, it does require a little bit of work on your end as a player. And that's kind of my take on that. So
I also like to give, I like leaving a little bit open-ended too with backgrounds, because it surprises me when things are thrown in there. I actually sometimes, in other games that I've played, I've asked them to, hey, give me a couple of mysteries thrown in there, like, you know, throw something at me at left field that I might have not known about before. You know, I kind of like, I like that mystery. I like being able to add a little bit of extra stuff into that. So yeah, I think if you talk to your DM, ask them, hey, throw something at me, try to include this in my background somewhere. You know, I think having that open dialogue and open conversation, having the ability to discuss that with your GM to make your experience more enjoyable. Yeah. I mean, you don't know until you try.
But to that point, I know I'm adding a little bit more on here. Don't be afraid to try other games though. I found personally that I learned more about role playing when I stepped outside of Dungeons and Dragons, and I started trying other game systems that allowed me to step outside of that level-based learning system. Because I found that when I was playing it, you get that mentality of, okay, well, I'm new. I'm not going to know anything. I need to wait till I get more levels, right? That's going to match that. When you get into other game systems where you can expand on your story more and still be basically a starting level person, for me, it expanded my ability to role play, it expanded my ability to storytell, and it gave me some other fun things to try. So, you know, idea-wise. So then when I would eventually come back to like my Dungeons and Dragons experience when I was first coming up is way different than when I would maybe try it now. Like my characters would be night and day.
Everybody starts from somewhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, anyways, any other questions?
Yeah, let's talk about. I mean, unless there are more questions. Okay, let's talk about. Wait, were you about to raise your hand? Okay, sorry, I saw a movement.
It was a sign.
Okay, so let's talk about how to play a character that's not just what's on your sheet. We talked a little bit about we talked a little bit about affectations, some of those extra stuff like playing through your flaws. How do you play it in character without derailing the party's goal?
It's a great topic, and it can be kind of tricky, especially when you're a new player. Because as new players, a lot of times when you're at the game table, everybody's excited, everyone wants to participate, everybody's that energy is tangible, right? it could or could not be because of all the energy drinks you've had as well, getting up to that point. Guilty as charged. That was definitely me when I was young. But it's important when you're getting your character together to not step on somebody else's toes. It sounds a little meta, obviously, but you don't want to you also don't want to make a character that just fits pre-designed roles, because then that limits your role play capability, right? Like everybody plays the fighter, everybody plays the cleric, everybody plays. Now, especially with D&D, the way it's formed, certain classes can do certain things that others can't. Like there's some overlap now. Like fighters are, clerics are a little bit more like fighters. Wizards are a little bit more like healers in certain examples. Rangers are a little bit more rangery. Barbarians, so on and so forth. But when you're making, in my opinion, when you're starting that off, try to well, first of all, know your character, but try not to be the edgelord, obviously, right? The brooding person who's always stepping forward but doesn't want to be a team. They're the loner. I'm a loner, Donnie, a rebel. Of course, that flew over all your heads. That was Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, way back in the day. But the other thing to keep in mind, though, too, when you've started your character off, in my opinion, it's okay to take a step away from that. Like, in a way, it's the Hermione Granger effect, right? When she hit the school, she's in her basically the first grade of that class, and she's running rings around some of these students. Did she really know all this in practicality, or did she just read the books and was kind of snotty about it?
Bad.
When you're playing your character, maybe. Like, if you know a little bit more about the game, don't be afraid to explore that a little bit. And also, don't be afraid to bluff. It's okay. Be wrong. Like maybe you are that ranger that everybody thinks you've gone out there and you've done some stuff, right? Maybe you're only first level, but yeah, you apprentice to somebody who's really experienced. The crocodile hunter ranger, took you under his wing for a couple months, and you these things. Don't be afraid to state something and to be wrong.
Yeah,
They really think it's wrong too. They should challenge you on it,
Right.
Or you roll it, or you
Don't
you did
always rely on the dice to just resolve that. Say, okay, do I know it? Brah. Okay, great. No, sometimes just role play that. Throw that out there. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter.
Or if you did a knowledge check and rolled 1, and then you got to
completely lie and
you got to
say
go with
yes.
it.
Yeah,
Because they're not going to know.
I am
with it.
100% confident in this thing that is totally wrong.
Sometimes that's where, again, that's role play. Sometimes that's where the most fun is going to come out, and then everybody turn and look at you and it's like, dude, you told us that was a trap, and it's just like a log sitting there. It was the last time I checked, and maybe you still roll with it. You're confident, And so now, every time you get near a suspicious log, everyone's like turning and looking at you. That's just great role play. And maybe that becomes a thing. You become the log guy, or whatever. It just, that's where you don't rely on your stats so much. That way, when you are truly stumped in and out of character, now you can make the roll and look to the game master and go, okay, what would we really know in this case? But some of that will require you to study the books a little bit, or have some practical knowledge of base understanding, like the monster manual or something like that.
Watch the D&D movie with Chris Pine. He bluffs his way through everything.
Well, exactly. Good point.
And it's awesome.
Everything. Like, I'm the planner. I make the plans, and if that one doesn't work, then I'll make up a new one.
Yep.
So you're just the guy that makes plans. What use do we have for you now?
And again, that's somebody playing above their level.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to do that. Just don't power game. Don't expect that stuff is always going to fall into play. Don't always give the correct answers. If you actually know it, play it as your character might actually see. If your character is pretty reasonably smart, yeah, maybe they do actually go with that. That might also be something you talk to your game master about. Let them know, hey, I'm going to kind of wing this a little bit. It's okay, but if you need me to make a roll for something, yeah, I can. But I find, in my experience, in most cases, because I tend to curate my groups for the players, that if they're doing that, I'm generally not going to step in. I'm not. I'm going to, because they're in that zone, they're playing, they're all interacting with one another, you know. And then if something happens and somebody makes a roll to look for something, and it's the direct opposite of what they said, then I'll let them play that out. And then in most cases, like, I'm kind of quiet. I just get to sit back and I get to watch the movie, basically, as the game master. That's fun, you know.
So, question for you: based on sitting back as a DM and watching those conversations, you know, about us interacting, have you ever changed what you were going to do based on that conversation?
Yes.
For the best or for the worst?
But yes.
Both? Okay, that's what I thought.
In some cases, well, I'm very good at improv, and in some
Yeah.
cases, sometimes something will get thrown out there, and I'm like, oh, I've got to use that.
Yeah.
I've got to go. That's great. You know, maybe it doesn't come up right away, but you know, I'll try to make a note down. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll arc the story that direction because it sounded good.
Yeah,
you know.
You gotta love it when everybody's, you know, role playing and then the DM just kind of starts making notes.
Yeah. When it gets quiet, then you gotta worry.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Well, that's why my dice bag says when the DM smiles, it's already too late. Yep.
So one of our questions on here says, when have you had a character do something in character that surprised even you? And if you guys have an example for that, start thinking about it. But there was one instance that came to mind. It was actually in a D&D game. Now our game was kind of the setting was a homebrew, and the idea was that our characters all came from a different plane, or they could have come from a different plane and like transported here with amnesia. And so we were all exploring this world. Well, some people were familiar with the world, and some of us were not. I was not. But so my character had amnesia, and we had to fight these bad guys or like save this town, but we couldn't, like, we didn't have the skills to do it ourselves, so we had to make a deal. And we found this paladin.
Good callback.
We found this paladin who agreed to help us, but he was also from a different world, and he said, I would like to build, in return, I would like you to help us build a church to my deity. And the deity's name was Tiamat. And none of us had ever heard of Tiamat. And so we're like, cool, sure.
And there was
we'll
only one player that knew about it out of character.
Yeah, out of character.
And he's like, can I roll? Can I roll? And I'm like, no, you actually don't know.
So we're like, sure, that's whatever. We really need to, save this town. And so we agreed, and the battle was fought. The town was saved, and we left that town. Help them with the resources to start building this church, and then we left. And then some time later, we came back to this town, and there's a church there, and now we have a lot of questions about stuff that's been going on in this town that if we had known earlier, maybe we wouldn't have made that choice. That was a super fun time.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that was a good game.
That was fun.
I had a Dragonlance game before where I was playing a cleric, and Jay, I know you don't know, but Jay was playing this. I was a gnome or just something with a very, very low intelligence, and we were basically tasked with, obviously saving the end of the world type of deal. Well, Poot was this character's name. Yeah, just the name. I mistakenly gave him a book that I didn't know was cursed, and I'm like, oh, we'll just give it to him to hold on to. He's dumb, nothing's going to happen. Well, unfortunately, that was my error, in that because he was so simple-minded, he was so much easier to take over get cursed and infected. And all along in this whole background, like, we're going on thinking he's had this book and we're not noticing anything different, but he's doing all these other underhanded stuff. In the end, he actually ended up killing the entire party.
Oh my gosh.
Like, wiped us out. end of the world, everything. And I'm like, and everyone still blames me to this day. It's been like 15 years. They're like, you gave the book to Poot. And you ended the campaign. I didn't know.
Whoops. Whoops. Any quick thoughts about, we're running out of time, any quick thoughts about how to get into character? Tips on getting into character. I personally...
I don't do my hair sometimes
Yeah.
for it. Like,
I like to dress up.
Yeah, we just... Well, even though you're only seeing, like, here up, like, well, what you see here can matter, you know, that helps get me in there, like, doing the hair, or
Yeah.
you do your makeup and stuff,
Yeah.
and all that, so yeah. That
Like
really
you even
Sometimes
had- you
I'll
even
get a
had your
wig.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a great wig and everything at one point, so yeah, it was fun.
Well,
Yeah.
you had
Sansa. And the red, yeah.
the
dreads.
yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also like our Marvel Superheroes game. I wear a wig for that because my character has very different hair from me. But also, I was finding it difficult to like keep us straight on when we're in our alter egos and when we're in our hero costumes. And so I got a pair of glasses from the dollar store, and I like cut out a mask out of foam and like glued it to the glasses. And so when we go into our hero forms, I'll like put the glasses on so I'm wearing my mask.
That's cute, that's a good idea.
So
For me, it was when I was doing when I'm trying to channel like a specific NPC or like person. Kind of going back to the callback to when we're developing the character in general. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll watch, like if it's a character I based off of an actor or something, I'll go back and watch the movie
yeah,
with them in it. Or
if I'm doing an accent, that helps me too.
Yeah, especially.
Watch somebody with an accent.
Or
Try and repeat them.
like there was a time for the vampire game we were running. I want to say for a good, I don't know. The seasons never went based upon a number of games, but I want to say at least 10 or 12 games. Like I would crank Baby Metal, and I would just have that playing in the background. You know, give me chocolate. And,
The Japanese band.
Yeah. And then that shifted over to like, and I have no idea. Like these were not necessarily tied to those specific topics. Baby Metal, kind of dark, but hokey and fun. But then at one point, what was it? I was doing, I think I was doing Marvel, and I was listening to K-pop. I was listening to 4 Minute and Psy and Hyuna and goodness. And shoot, Neon came from that group.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So you listen to stuff to get you in the mood for the game.
Yeah.
I used to listen to the Queen of the Dam soundtrack.
Oh,
Vampire
Queen of the Dam.
all
Yeah,
the time.
Vampire. Yeah, I listen to
It's
that.
an amazing soundtrack.
I listen to Queen
I
of the
still
Damned
listen to
a
it.
lot. Yes. Oh, and I also listen to the Rockstar album for Vampire 1.2.
And,
for
like,
80s metal.
So you can do that when you're like getting ready for your game. It's a good idea. Jerome also does a great job. So our games are streamed on Twitch.
Oh, thank you.
So we all have like bumper music before the game, and so Jerome kind of lets that play out for
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes before we go live and start the game. So
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I
that's
try to
great.
curate that so for people who might be watching, tuning from the very beginning, it's
Like us
royalty-free
as players,
music
we can't
that
hear
play.
it, but
Yeah.
when if we miss a game and like watch the stream later, then that's a fun way to kind of set the tone.
I did want to add because you were talking about like characters that like a dynamic or whatever that happened and changed everything. There was a game that I was running. I haven't run it since, but it was super fun. It's called Hong Kong Action Theater. And the idea is you basically have like two characters. Like you are one character, and then you're constantly auditioning for roles in the next adventure, which is the next movie. Basically, that's the whole idea behind it. And your character growth allows you to get more star power, and that allows you to bid on different roles in that upcoming movie, whether it's starring or whatever. And of course, you have all these weird little traits that go into it. Well, one of them, as I developed a story, one of the players took on the role of Guaylo Joe. If you don't know, the term Guaylo is a slang term for white people and Chinese. Because he believed himself to be Chinese. He was not. And someone had given him the nickname Guaylo Joe. He was kind of sleazy, underworld type of character, and always had his fingers in something. But he had this statement, like if he stated during the once per game, if he said Guaylo on the down low, he could basically like blend in the background and hide and go away. It was his catchphrase, right? He'd be like Guaylo on the down low, and then he's just gone. Like everyone's like, where'd he go? Well, the player, on the other hand, was way overplaying his role, which can play up at the end of the game. That's how you get greater star power.
Did he sing his own theme song?
Huh?
Did he sing his own theme song?
No, he didn't sing it. So this whole time it was an action flick, right? And he kept getting bounced from scene to scene and whatnot. And he kept trying to find out, like, nobody knew who Guaylo Joe was. He was getting increasingly offended because he felt people should know, his worth, right? Well, he finally got thrown into a car at one point, and he's in the back seat, and they're getting ready to drive away, and he just, it was something effective. He told the person, because they didn't even really know who he was. He just says, thank you, thank you, Guaylo Joe. And they look and they go, thank you, Guaylo Joe. And he pops up from the back seat, he's like, I told you they knew me.
That was Dina's character.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
It was hilarious. He waited the whole game to try and set that up.
That's great.
And yeah, it was hilarious. It had nothing to do with the game whatsoever.
Long-term callbacks.
Yes. So, before we wrap up here, did anybody? Stop. There's 30 minutes till the next panel. Do anybody else have any other questions, comments, anything you wanted to add?
Problems you can solve.
You've got a problem. Also, check out the people. Sure.
So, I used to be like the perma DM for my group, and sometimes I feel like I have problems pulling back.
Okay.
When I create a player character, it's like kind of the one instance that I'm allowed to go all crazy and do all the stuff that like I watch other people do. Basically, how would you manage like?
Okay, so in case the microphone didn't pick that up, perma DM or former perma DM having problems pulling back with characters that you've created?
Yeah.
Okay, and not taking over the game, or?
Sometimes I make characters that are like crazy out there. And
okay.
The other players are like, oh, I'm just a normal.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. You are here. They are right here. And you're trying not to like steamroll them or take over the game. Okay. That can be difficult, especially if you're playing with a bunch of new people. And a lot of times this is very common because it's D&D. It's very common in D&D groups because they might start just falling in line and letting you stay in the front. And for better or worse, obviously it's taking away from their role play opportunities. Or they may not even understand they're not getting as much out of the game. So one thing you may want to try to do is latch onto another player and kind of make them your sidekick. And when something comes up, instead of you doing it,
Nudge them. Hey,
Robin,
what do you think?
To the Batmobile,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And treat them in kind of that, like, especially if you feel like you are going a bit too far, reel them back in for something. And even if it's something your character can do, just like, but you can do this, pull them over and whatever, and maybe even talk to your game master or something and come up with a way to make them step out and come into the forefront. Like maybe something happens to your character where they can't speak English.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a hilarious scene.
That was great.
She ended up getting cursed so bad that she couldn't speak English anymore.
I couldn't even type it on my phone. It would turn out to be Gaelic.
That was great.
It was horrible.
Right, and so one of the players just spontaneously like, oh, did somebody uninstall English on you? So, but joking aside, something like that. That might be something you can try. That obviously doesn't take you out of gameplay, right? But it keeps you from being able to directly communicate with them. So now you're having to do charades or something, you know, or they are forced to step up and negotiate or whatever have you. It doesn't have to be a permanent thing, but it can be something you can kind of turn it into a role play and try and foster that and build that up, you know, out of them. Otherwise, you can also talk to them out of character and help them out with their characters and look at it and say, you know I kind of keep doing this, but your character is actually really better at this. I may know the rules really well, but realistically speaking, like, this is something your character would actually do. So why don't I give you like a couple things that your character probably would know, so that if it comes up, just look at your character sheet. Oh, I can actually do that, and now they swing into combat.
Share the crazy.
Yeah. I mean that's definitely a way to do it. But kudos to you for recognizing that, because a lot of people, they just won't. They'll just keep going, and the next thing you know, you're on somebody's YouTube channel, you know, with bad player DM interactions or whatever have you, because they read your story on Reddit, you know.
Yeah, it could be like if you gave your character some kind of handicap, like not speaking English or something, that would like limit you from like doing the steamrolling, but also could provide good role-playing exercise for yourself, then maybe like that's a way to not be bored when you're trying to play at the other player's
Or maybe
level.
your face is out there and theirs aren't. And so now they have to step up because somebody's looking specifically for you, and they have no choice. Like, they have to step up and do something, because otherwise, you know, you're exposed. That might be another way to do it.
But also, like, as like a more experienced player, when I have other players that are less experienced, I try and look for opportunities to kind of, to draw them out. Like, whether that's just in conversation or, like Jerome said, pointing them to, you know, the solution that they have a better, you know, that they have a skill to work with. I try to actively look for opportunities to get the other players engaged.
Like, I had a player who was a wallflower wanting to do more, basically. And are you guys familiar with What We Do in Shadows? Okay, so we've got some fans here. So it was the vampire game, right? And he decided to go out as himself for Halloween. He looks like a vampire. He looks like hideous, like Nosferatu. That's what the clan's name is. They don't look human, but it's a Halloween, so he's kind of getting away with it. So at that point, I started having people calling him the Baron. He had no idea who the Baron was, in or out of character. The players around him did, and so there's like, oh, you're the Baron. Oh, you must be like, you know, you must be. Nendor or whatnot, and so the other people coming up to them, it's like, fucking guy, you know, and so the other players are having fun with it. He's kind of lost, but having fun with it, and it's pulling him out to the forefront. And he's like, but these people, they keep calling me the Baron, and I don't understand. And so now it prompted a conversation to explain to him like what the character was in character. And so, again, there's ways to do that. It doesn't have to be super detrimental, but as long as you're cognizant of it and you can try and loop other people in, I think everybody else is still going to keep having some fun. So, anything else? None? Okay, well, cool. Well, thank you all for showing up and hanging out with us. We, of course, are Lost Tribes Gaming. You can find us on twitch.tv/Lost Tribes Gaming. Until our new game starts, actually, our new game is starting the following week. So we play every week. This particular week we have Star Wars on Wednesday at 7 p.m. our time. We have our World of Darkness game, which is Mythic Savannah, on Friday at 7:30 p.m. And then on Saturday at 6 p.m. we have our Marvel Superheroes game. And then this coming next Wednesday, which is the 16th, at 7 p.m., we have Survivor's Dawn, which is a new game, actually kind of appropriate to what we're talking about here.
Brand new characters.
Brand new characters. I specifically told everybody to, I kind of gave them a questionnaire to fill out about themselves, and then I turned around and made a character based off of them. Now, it's not them specifically, but it's like what they told me. Like, what sort of traits did they have? Did they go hunting? Did they go camping? Do they sew? Do they whatever? Like, whatever they want to throw at me. And then I kind of, wrote that down, gave them some, some background, a little bit of background, put them in the world of Phoenix of 2098, and that's where it's going to be going from there. I'm keeping the rest of it under wraps because it's a surprise to the players as well. They have no idea what's about to happen. So.
Cool.
So yeah, cool. Well, thank you guys for stopping by.
Enjoy the rest of the con.